today's going to be we're in our final legs here of the Ops Experts Club topics before we go to Q&A. And this is going to be just a retouch on SOPs and why they're necessary, and just kind of a breakdown on like how to get your team doing them easily. So it's like, it's a beginner topic, but it's one of those ones that like gets ignored all the time because people think it's a pain in the butt, and it can be, but not really. And so it's worth rehashing. So I'll go ahead and share my screen because y'all know I brought slides.
Yep, the only one.
Oops. Can you enable screen sharing for me?
Yeah, let's. There we go.
All right. All right. So I will admit my slides are not as fun as I usually make them.
Disappointment.
I made them more like beefy, like meaty, just to make sure. I'm a week back from my trip. I wanted to make sure that I like had all my text there to go from, so I didn't forget anything. So oh, come on. There we go.
In case you're wondering, today is not August 11th.
It is not, because I was supposed to present last week, and then my husband gently reminded me that we were going to be in a car on the way to the airport at that time, and I was like, "It's okay, I can fit it," and he was like, "No, you can't fit it. Don't do that." So, so it was meant to be last week, but now it's this week. So we're going to cover why SOPs are so important, how to go about adding a daily workflow as an SOP easily, and what needs to be in a standard SOP. So we'll take a little field trip at the end to something that Aaron has put together.
Nice.
So we know that you guys already know why SOPs are so important, because if you're this far in Ops Experts, you're not listening if you haven't gleaned that SOPs are really important. But so there's just that it makes a lot less room for error if everyone's working from the same process. So you're not going to have all these little things falling through from a missing process, and which will affect your brand consistency. Because if two people are trying to do the same thing and one person has a really great way to do it and another person's just coming into it and they don't have an SOP to work from, they're going to drop the ball in some areas, and it's going to make your whole company look bad. Not intentionally, not because you guys aren't awesome, but just because someone might be missing a piece, especially if they're trying to work fast, if you guys are traveling quickly, growing quickly. Because that's what Collab is trying to help you do, is set foundations to scale. So it's easier to refine systems over time if you actually have a system in place. So like you can get great team members in who have these great ideas, but they're going to do it their own way. And then if they're not adding to an existing SOP, once that person moves on, you're just going to lose it. And then you just hope that the next person is as awesome as the last person. When really everybody's probably going to have a skill set that they can add to that SOP. So you have an existing one, you have a new person coming in and using it. If they're a visual learner, then they might add helpful diagrams. If you have someone who is more of an auditory processor, they're going to come in and add maybe visuals and maybe add looms, maybe looms that didn't exist before, or they might have like a different take on it. So they'll shoot a different loom so people can see different perspectives on it. And then someone like a Taryn who comes in and has a brain for tech is going to come in and know better software that might be able to do something more easily, or formulas that might be able to do it for you, adding in automations. But that doesn't mean anything, no matter how awesome your tech team is, or your ops team, if they don't have a basis that they're working from to add on to. It also is going to make delegate and elevate a lot easier, because once someone realizes that they need to hand something off their plate, if they have an SOP in place for that, they can just go, "Oh yeah, I'm done with this. This is going to go to this person." You can just hand it over on a silver platter, and you're not having to spend as much time on training.
Yeah.
So adding a workflow as an SOP made easy. So this is just breaking down, just kind of like, I feel like someone might look at an SOP, the assignment of an SOP, and immediately get intimidated because it's like, oh my gosh, this is such a big task. How in the world am I going to break this down so someone else can understand? Like, there's just too much. So really, like, it's as easy as just doing it, and doing it slower and more intentional so that you are aware of what you're doing as you do it. So life hack or work hack. I will shoot a loom. Loom, if you're not paying for it, has a maximum of 5 minutes. But if you have a video editing software, like I just use iMovie, if you have a PC, there's like a myriad of free software that you can use for video editors. Just keep shooting the loom and just shoot your whole process. And then you can put it in your video editor afterward. And you can just be like, okay, like here's where, oh yeah, I fussed around for a second here and forgot what I was doing. I'm going to cut that and just cut it out. And you're going to get a 15-minute loom down to a 5-minute loom. So that's what I personally do. Because if I'm trying to get it all into a 5-minute loom, I'm going to spend 25 minutes anyway, reshooting the thing, trying to condense it into being a 5-minute loom.
Okay.
So hack there. So another idea is to add it to your, project management software. If you have like a notification that comes up from Asana or Monday that's like, here's what you have to do today. You might just go about your day and not remember that you need to make an SOP for the thing that you're doing. So it's helpful to just see it on the top of your list. Like, oh yeah, you need to make an SOP when you are exporting, affiliate payouts today. So that's the second part, is the hack that I showed you. Record a loom or several looms, breaking down aspects of your process. So just record yourself doing the whole thing. And then that's going to make it easier on you to also take notes into a Word doc or Google Doc as you go through your daily task. And it doesn't need to be polished. Just record what you're doing. Just like make notes about what it is that you're doing. Because, oops, I'm typing in it. So now it's not going to go to my next slide. There we go. Because you're going to have time to refine it. So once you finish doing your thing, look through your notes, make sure that your gobbledygook is like actual sentences so that you'll be able to come back to it and like know what you meant later. So if you just type in like a word and you know what that means, but you're not going to like 3 days from now know what that means, just make sure that you expand that. And then you're going to take a little break so that your brain can get fresh about it and it's not right in your mind. So I would say like 3 days, 2 or 3 days, come back to it, look over your process and make sure that everything still makes sense that you put down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking really fast. Does anybody have anything that they want to add?
I would say the 3 days is a great idea, because there are many a times I have shot a loom and sent it out and then went back and rewatched it and I was like, oh, that made zero sense. I just wasted somebody's time watching my loom. And I'm like, man, I hope they didn't really watch that already, because that video made zero sense and now I look like an idiot.
Yeah, I'm always like, please watch in double time so that I don't waste your time if you don't actually get any value from it, if I'm like shooting something like right away. But yeah, if you're doing something that's gonna last, like, yeah, give yourself some time to breathe and then come back to it so you can be like, oh yeah, like that was nonsense. I need to reshoot this part of it, which is also having the video editing software. You can reshoot a part of it and then you can just plug that in. And it's really like, it sounds complicated. It's really not. Like when you put it in a video editor, it's just a string of video and you get to watch it and you just like click it and you're like, that's where I want it to, the cut to start. And then you go and you're like, okay, that's when I'm done talking nonsense, click, delete it. And it's like, it's really easy. And you just click and drag to bring in new, it's just highly recommend.
And use the pause feature too. If you need to like just pause your video, if you don't need to keep going. I once watched 2 hours of somebody's SOP. It's like, this is way too long. Why are you giving me 2 hours of videos to watch? Just pause it. Like, I don't need to watch you do everything.
I forgot about the pause feature. Travis reminds me of that one because yeah, I'll just record the whole thing and then I'll like click stop and start all over again. And I'm like, oh, now I have to start all over. And he's like, why don't you just pause? Like, no one wants to watch you figure it out. Like, figure it out, pause it, figure it out, and then do it. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. You don't have to hit stop. You can hit pause.
Yeah.
That's important. So if anyone gets this reference, then you're cool. It's dangerous to go alone. Take a team member. So once you like are sure that you have everything the way that you think makes sense, pass it on to one of your team members who doesn't do this process, who's not familiar with it, and have them read through it and even like attempt to kind of follow it, like make sure that they have the tools that they need to go through it. And then they can give you feedback where they're like, dude, like I wouldn't have any idea what to do with this coming into it new. Because that's going to show you where your gaps are, that you might just, you might just push 3 buttons and it's just like, yeah, you just push 3 buttons. You use the shortcut. It's no big deal. But if someone's coming in new, they might not know that. And so, like super invaluable to have that outsider feedback, because it's going to be probably a pretty fresh person who's going to be using your SOP.
Totally agree.
What needs to be in a standard SOP? That's a great question. It is going to vary from business to business.
Let me ask that. Savannah, could you tell us what needs to be in a standard SOP?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked. It will vary from business to business, but it's important in every business that everyone's working from the same template. So that way everyone is following the same instructions. People are gonna get that muscle memory where they are learning where to look for what. Because if someone's just throwing spaghetti at the wall, it again, kind of like how we start our conversation about having a system. You got to have a good system to build from. Otherwise, it's not going to get better. So it can be a painful process, but if your SOPs aren't following a template, you're going to want to make sure that you assign that out to someone in your team to glean through the SOPs that you have and just kind of re-templatize them. So that way you're kind of starting at a base level. So if your SOPs are just kind of gobbledygook right now, don't worry, just have someone go through and fix it. And then when you do that, that's giving your team the opportunity to make all of your existing SOPs better anyway, because they're going to have questions because you're probably missing stuff.
Yeah.
Pro tip, keep all your SOPs in one place. There is as we're all working virtually and it becomes more of a thing in business, like it is like an epidemic of people keeping their SOPs all over the place. Like if you have some stuff in Slack and you have some stuff in Monday and you have some stuff in Asana and some stuff in Google Docs, you're going to drive your team crazy and no one's going to be able to follow those SOPs. It's just silliness. So even if you're going to have them stored in several places, depending on where you communicate, like you need to have still like the central place where everything is just linked to. And then that way, if an SOP gets updated, someone isn't having to update it in Slack and Monday and Asana and Google Docs. Like just keep it in Google Docs, or if you use Microsoft, like keep it in OneDrive. So you're updating from one place. Everyone knows exactly where to go. You have lots of control in there of like if you want to have your teams only be able to view things for their department, you can set up permissions that way, easy enough. But they all still need to live in that one place so everyone knows where to go, so they can look for their question first before bugging another team member for the answer. You're going to save so much company time and employee frustration and energy if they know, like, okay, I went to Google Docs, OneDrive, whatever. I looked for my question. I looked for the process. It doesn't yet exist. Now I'm going to ask my team lead about it.
I was going to say, do people still use Microsoft Teams? Like, is that a big thing? Do you guys deal with a lot of people who use that? I mean, we used to have a channel where it was just simply SOP related. If you had questions for SOPs, every SOP that was created was in there. We moved to OneDrive. I mean, same. You just create its own channel. You can do that, I think, in all those programs you mentioned, can you not? I'm pretty new to Slack and Asana, so.
That's super smart, though. I love that, having a specific channel where people ask questions about the SOPs. That's awesome. So that way, you know, if they look for the SOP, they don't see it. Then being able to see that channel, they might be able to see that it exists. It's visible for one team, but not another team within the organization. So that's awesome. I love that idea.
And then it's usually whoever created the channel, the administrator or whomever can see and can answer those questions of, they know who to bug to go, oh, hey, you haven't created this, go create it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea.
Yeah, and people are still using the Microsoft suite. It's getting more popular. They're trying to rival Google's suite right now. So yeah, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Office 365. It's I feel like it's getting there. Ben hates it. I don't like it. We don't use it a lot. I think what you find is a lot of bigger corporations get headway in that area. I'm not sure if they're getting some sort of bulk discount, and Google Drive is better for smaller companies, but yeah, I've seen a lot of
I
really
guess
big
that would make
companies.
sense. I've seen a couple law firms and a couple big accounting firms, like on the 100 side, they all use
Yeah.
Microsoft Teams is like their main. They use other channels within departments, but
Mhm.
their major chat systems are
Yeah,
Teams.
I see a lot of companies that don't have large internal tech or IT teams that contract out. A lot of those that they contract out to will just push Microsoft Enterprise,
Mhm.
Microsoft, because they're getting
Yeah.
Microsoft. So it's like this perpetual pushing of Microsoft sales products. I hate it. I hate it.
But then again, I'm also in Canada, so I don't know what it's like for you guys. So maybe it's a Canadian thing.
I think it's an international thing. I think it's pretty common. Something that's nice about it is that then like you have one, like your umbrella is all contained versus having to use like different products that integrate with each other. But I will say that Slack and Google integrate pretty well with each other.
Yeah, I've noticed that. That's something I've just started getting into, which I've seen they work really well together, which is nice.
Mhm.
I love me some Slack. I know it's like, it seems like a intimidating beast to first start out with, but then once you figure out the search feature and you know how to make that work to your advantage, like
Mhm.
Mhm. Yep, Slack stands for searchable location of all communication and knowledge. Their goal was to create a hub where you could search for all communications as well as any assets that were shared between people.
that's
And
what I was
so-
trying to
Fun
read to somebody
fact.
yesterday, what the abbreviation was. And I'm like, I know it's searchable and I know it's knowledge base.
Yeah.
Searchable knowledge base. That's what you need to know.
Uh-huh.
So this little field trip, we are only 20 minutes in. I talk so fast, guys. I hope we have a lot to, a lot to talk about afterward.
Oh yeah.
So this is just a skeleton that Aaron had created for one of our clients, and I personally have been just using it since because it's great. I think he sourced a couple of examples that he found online to kind of put this together. And so I'm actually working with one of our clients right now to kind of work with what they've had existing and then bring this in as well, so we can kind of marry them both and find something that works specifically for their team. So obviously you want an SOP title. SOP owner author is great because then you know if there's something wrong with it, if there's just something that you think should be added, then you know exactly who to go to edit that. Because a lot of the time you'll see SOPs are created and they exist in the system, but it's like, oh, this link is wrong, or like this, you know, this software updated and this function doesn't really do what they are saying it does anymore. And then it just exists in the company system and you don't know who to go to fix it. And you don't want to just give everybody permission to change SOPs as they see fit. That's very dangerous. So yeah, having
So
the
dangerous. Don't do it. Don't do it.
don't do it. So yeah, so that's a really helpful piece that you want to make sure that you have in there. Effective date, so that way when you go in, you can see when it was created, and then last revised updated. If it hasn't been updated in a year, someone probably needs to go through and scrub it and make sure that everything still looks right. And then approved by, usually probably going to be the team lead. But this kind of gives you, like, if the owner author is no longer there, then you know who else to go to. So really he just lines it out, like the purpose of it. So this is so the whole team can know why this SOP exists. Process. So obviously this is going to be the longest part. This is going to be the meat of what it is that you're doing. And then the resources, this is such a helpful ad, and it didn't occur to me to do that until Aaron had put this together, where like I'll usually link to like whatever software it is within the SOP, but just having a list so they know, like, okay, I'm gonna need Google Docs, I'm gonna need I have an example right now, but there's like, you know, Infusionsoft. You're going to need Infusionsoft plugins. You're going to need admin access. You're going to need different
Yeah.
assets.
Even
Um,
mentioning if it's admin or not, that's helpful because, you know, it's like, oh, I have a Google account with the team. Maybe I can do this. Like, well, actually, you need a Google admin account to accomplish this.
Yeah, and that's like the main SOPs that I'm always creating are for Zendesk, and pretty much any editing access that you can have in Zendesk, you have to be an admin. And typically not there, you only have like 1 or 2 admins on the team. And so and a team lead can't just say, hey, so and so, can you go and add, 6 new triggers for this thing that's going on? They can't because they don't have admin access. So I try to make sure that I really include in there every time, whether they need admin access or not, because that's going to really affect who you delegate it to. Or if you're going to give someone like temporary keys to the kingdom, and then you have to remember to revoke them afterwards. So like, that's a really important thing to keep in mind for whatever process that you're handing off.
I also like to drop in context there, especially if it's like a new ask or a new SOP, drop in maybe a link to the Slack channel where the request, because there's usually a lot of context in the conversation of asking, or maybe somebody sent me a Loom video saying, hey, can you do this? Dropping that in helps whoever maybe doing the SOP down the line get a little bit of the context of, okay, what was around this ask? What were they trying to do? And then when they're reevaluating the SOP too, they can go back to that context and be like, this SOP doesn't really cover what that person was asking for or looking for. So that's kind of nice too.
Would you put that with the assets, or would you put that like with the purpose?
I usually drop it down in the resources, like just as like, this is the context. And then as I do an SOP, when I create my own looms, then I would put that in the process. But just as like a here, like an FYI, if you want to know why this is being asked or what's being asked about this, here's why.
Cool. So yeah, I can even add that like into the table or whatever.
Mhm.
Just add another column. So risk assessment and quality control cover the possible problems that can be encountered. So this is basically like talking about admin access. So it could be like you might come up against it that you're working through this process and there's a piece that that you actually don't have access to. Reach out to, so and so who is the admin of this software at this time to make sure that they give you the proper access. Definitions, identify frequently used terms and acronyms. So for example, SOP, if someone on your team has never, they haven't worked in like a bigger team before, and they have no idea what SOP means, like you want to include, that means standard operating procedure. IFS, we always use that acronym when we're talking about Infusionsoft. So there's lots of different abbreviations that your team uses. For one of our clients that Kimberly isn't here today, but I bet that she would absolutely be able to speak to this. The Rainmaker family has so many cute terms for things, like so many, that when you're coming in, it feels kind of like they're speaking French and you're a dumb American and you're about to order something wrong. And of course they wouldn't treat you badly about it, but still, like, it's a lot. So this would be a great part where they can be like, this is done for you, this is mastermind, this is blah blah blah, because they have like little acronyms and cute like alternate titles for all of it. So it'd be it's just super helpful for someone coming in new that might not know all of your terminology, all of your abbreviations and whatnot.